Hi, so welcome to the first lecture video of this course. So we will going to study about OSI model and what actually is TCP/IP stack. So the diagram shows the layer diagram of OSI model. So you can see that the OSI model comprises of 7 layers. Layer 1 is the physical layer, layer 2 is the data link layer, layer 3 is the network layer, 4 is the transport layer, 5 and 6 are session and presentation layer, and the 7 is the application layer. So let us discuss the definition of OSI model. I have taken this definition from the Wikipedia. So OSI model says that OSI model is the open system interconnection model. So this is the full form of the OSI, that is open system interconnection model, and it is a conceptual model. Note the word conceptual. And OSI model characterizes and standardizes the communication function of a telecommunication or computing system without regard to its underlying internal structure and technology. So it means that OSI model work as a reference. It is a standard, or OSI model is just a guideline. OSI model says that if you want to implement your networking subsystem, then your networking subsystem should be implemented by fragmenting the system into independent 7 layers. And what are these 7 layers? The following are the 7 layers. So OSI model says that if you are implementing a networking subsystem, then you should implement the transport layer, for example, but OSI model doesn't say how you should implement the transport layer. Similarly, OSI model says that if you are implementing your networking subsystem, then you should implement the network layer. But it doesn't say how you should implement the network layer. So this is the meaning of the last line of the definitions, that OSI model do not mention the underlying internal structure and technology. It just says that if you are implementing your own network stack, then your network stack is expected to implement the following layers in the following sequence, but it is up to you how you implement them. So OSI model is the description of networking subsystem. The networking subsystem is also called network stack. Why it is called a stack? Because OSI model is the stack of layers. That is, the layers are put on the top of one another. So OSI model, as I've already discussed, it is a guideline. So let us discuss the definition of a layer. A layer is a logically complete functionality of a networking component is referred to as a layer. So layer implements a complete functionality of one given component of a networking subsystem. Each layer has a specific function. Functions of layers do not overlap. For example, if the transport layer performs a function 1 and network layer performs a function 2, then function 1 and function 2 have to be completely non-overlapping. That is, the responsibility of the layers are completely isolated and segregated from one another. So data packet move across the layers bidirectionally. It means that in the OSI model, the data packet moves upward and the data packet also moves downwards. All layers stack together to build a complete networking subsystem. So one most common example of OSI model implementation is TCP/IP network stack, which run inside your operating system. So remember TCP/IP stack is the implementation of OSI model. You can take it like this, that OSI model is a class and TCP/IP stack is an instantiation of that class. If you have done a little bit of object-oriented programming, there you have a class and you instantiate a class to form an object. Then same thing is here. OSI model is like a class and you instantiate a class to create an object. So this is the relation between OSI model. OSI model is a reference, whereas TCP/IP stack is an actual implementation of OSI model. And note that the TCP/IP network stack is the most commonly used networking stack which is being implemented in almost all the operating systems. 99.9% of the machines in the world runs TCP/IP stack. So TCP/IP stack is a part of operating system. So as I said, the OSI model is just a reference, it is a standard, it is a guideline, whereas TCP/IP stack is the actual implementation of OSI model in the operating system. So you can see the difference between the OSI model and the TCP/IP stack, which is the actual implementation of the OSI model. So you can see in the OSI model, there is presentation layer and session layer, whereas these layers are not present in the TCP/IP stack. So it's not like that these layers are not present in the TCP/IP stack. The thing is that the implementation of presentation layer and session layer is not done separately in the TCP/IP stack. The application layer and the transport layer partially implement the functionality of presentation layer and session layer. So this is the reason that presentation layer and session layer are not separate layers in the TCP/IP stack. So presentation layer and session layer are partially implemented in layers above it and below. So OSI model is just a theoretical model, whereas TCP/IP stack is the actual implementation of the OSI model. There are other networking stack which is also the actual implementation of the OSI model, but the most important implementation of the OSI model is called TCP/IP stack, which runs in 99.99% of the machine in the world. And that is the reason that all the books have been written on TCP/IP stack. So in networking, we will going to study the TCP/IP stack in detail. So in this entire course, we will actually going to focus on understanding the implementation and the functioning of these following 4 layers. The physical layer is actually out of the scope of computer science because physical layer is more about electrical signaling. So types of questions that are usually asked from the OSI model is that you are often asked that given a protocol X, where X could be any protocol, it could be ARP protocol, it could be ICMP, it could be ping, it could be HTTP or etc. You can be asked that on which layer of OSI model does this protocol X operate. So unless you understand the TCP/IP stack or the OSI model fairly well, and unless you have the knowledge of the protocol X, you can't be comfortable in answering this question. Also, the second type of questions that are often asked is that what happens at each layer of the TCP/IP stack when a packet is received or sent and the packet is destined for a remote machine or a local machine. Also, you should be able to answer the questions that what happens at each layer when the packet is received and the packet is destined for a remote machine and when the packet is destined for a local machine. So remember, when the machine receives a packet, the packet traverses through the TCP/IP stack from bottom layer to top layer, and when the packet is generated by the machine itself, that is, the packet is generated by the application, then the packet traverses through the TCP/IP stack from the application layer towards physical layer. So we will going to discuss about the journey of the packet. This is called the ingress journey of the packet, the ingress journey of the packet. This is called the ingress journey of the packet, whereas this is called the egress journey of the packet. So we will going to discuss all the aspects of each layer in the TCP/IP stack in sufficient detail in this course. we will discuss various protocols, that is the most famous protocols from which the questions are often asked. We will discuss the functioning of those protocols, why those protocols are designed in that particular way, and what is the relationship between the protocol and the layer on which they are running. And we will also discuss the relationship between layers of a TCP/IP stack. That is, what is the relationship between the data link layer and the network layer, and what is the relationship between network layer and the transport layer, and what is the relationship between application layer and the transport layer. So after doing this course, you will be able to answer almost all the networking questions related to L2 routing, L3 routing, the functionality of a particular protocol, the functionality of a particular protocol, the functionality of a particular layer of the TCP/IP stack, and by the end of this course you will going to understand that how networking subsystem actually works. Going forward, then the third type of questions which are often asked from the OSI model or TCP/IP stack is that what are the changes happen in the packet content as it traverses through the TCP/IP stack during the course of its incoming journey and outgoing journey. So remember, the incoming journey of the packet is the journey of the packet in the TCP/IP stack from the bottom layer towards the top layer. And the outgoing journey of the packet is the journey of the packet in the TCP/IP stack from the top layer, that is the application layer, towards the bottom layer, that is data link layer. So once you understand the functionality of the TCP/IP stack layer by layer, you will be able to understand that what are the changes the packet is subjected to when the packet traverses through the TCP/IP stack. Now, in this slide, we will going to discuss that each layer in the TCP/IP stack has its own isolated, non-overlapping responsibilities. For example, when the packet travels in the network from, say, router A to router B, and router A and router B are directly connected routers, then it is the responsibility of the data link layer to take the packet from node A to its directly connected neighbor, node B. So data link layer is concerned with node-to-node delivery. That is, data link layer is concerned for data delivery from node to its adjacent node only. This is also called L2 routing. Similarly, network layer is responsible for the delivery of the packet from the source machine to destination machine. Now remember, source machine and destination machine can be present anywhere in the network. There can be any number of intermediate routers between source machine and destination machine. So network layer is responsible for the data delivery from source node to destination node. Transport layer, on the other hand, is responsible for the data delivery between processes. So let us say you have the process X or application X running on the source machine, and you have application Y running on destination machine. So transport layer will be responsible for the data delivery between X and Y, where X is the application running on source machine and Y is the application running on destination machine. Application layer, on the other hand, could be any generic application which implement networking functions. So let us say X is a WhatsApp application. The application Y running on the destination machine is also WhatsApp. So the application X and Y could be any applications which implements networking communication. Physical layer, on the other hand, is responsible to transmit the data on the wire in the form of electrical signals. And as I have already mentioned, the physical layer is out of the scope of this course. So no layer is aware of layer above it or below it. Now what does it mean? You can see on the right hand side that the most famous protocols at each layer is listed. The application layer, the most famous protocols are ping, HTTP, WhatsApp, all mobile apps, and there are thousands of applications which falls under application layer. So any application which communicates over the network falls under the application layer. The most famous transport layer protocols are UDP and TCP protocol. Of course, there are other protocols, but we are talking only about the famous ones. So the network layer protocols are IP protocol. 99% of the machines in the world are running IP protocol. And the other protocol is IPv6 protocol, which is now becoming famous. And data link layer, the most famous protocol is Ethernet protocol. So we will going to discuss all these protocols in detail, that how they function. Now coming back to the point that no layer is aware of the layer above it or below it. What does it mean? It simply means that, for example, let the network layer is running IP protocol. So the IP protocol will not assume that the transport layer protocol is UDP or TCP. The IP layer protocol has to function without knowing what protocol is running as the transport layer protocol. Similarly, IP layer has to function without knowing or without assuming that the data link layer protocol is the Ethernet protocol. It means that each protocol in a particular layer of the TCP/IP stack runs without assuming anything about the protocol running in the layer above it or below it in the TCP/IP stack. So this is the reason I said that each layer works in complete isolation and has their own set of responsibilities. So once again, in the diagram below, the transport layer is responsible for the data delivery between applications. Network layer is responsible for the data delivery between source machine and the destination machine. And the data link layer is responsible for the data delivery from a node to its adjacent node in the network, that is hop by hop. So that's all with the OSI model, introduction of the OSI model. Since it's a complete theory, therefore I am wrapping it up fast, otherwise you guys will feel sleepy. I want to cover the theoretical part as fast as possible so that you guys can start up with the assignments as soon as possible. Because networking by its nature is very theoretical subject. So I don't want you guys to feel sleepy and getting bored that you are learning a lot of theory and without doing any practical. So I will keep the theory portion of this course short, but at the same time comprehensive and complete. So next we will going to discuss data encapsulation and decapsulation, which is another theory portion of the subject but very important.